The BMW X6 M550i. Now this is the supposed sweet spot in the BMW coupe-like SUV lineup, offering 80 to 90% of the performance found in the X6M without any of its compromises or exceedingly high price tag. So with that, let's talk about this thing. Now, I'm not normally someone who discusses the merits of exterior styling, but just take a gander at this thing. It's just remarkable. These lines, they scream performance. They harken back to BMW's long history of motorsports. In fact, this thing looks like it's something that should be ringing the bells of Notre Dame. Now with that, let's talk about the interior, really why you're buying the X6 in the first place. The X6 largely shares its interior with the X5, bar a few design changes. The door cards, most notably, are now entirely different. You now have these large motorsports like grab handles, which are totally necessary in a 5,000-pound SUV. The back seat area has also been changed. Due to the coupe-like roofline, you now have reduced headspace. So if you're above 6 foot tall, you're probably going to struggle back there. And the trunk area has been compromised again by the roofline. Let's talk about the infotainment system now. The infotainment system in this car is BMW's most recent variant of iDrive, and that's honestly a good thing. I think iDrive is probably the best infotainment system currently on the market. There's a great use of physical and touch controls. Wireless Apple CarPlay works great. The menu structure is easy to navigate, and you have a built-in dash cam depending on the trim level of X6 you get. The gauge cluster is easy to read, and the heads-up display doesn't have any issues with being blurred out by the sun or any weird sunlight issues. The audio system in this car is the Harman Kardon unit, which is average. If you can swing the Bowers & Wilkins option, I highly recommend it. And the last thing I'm going to talk about before we head into the shop are these seats. I honestly think they're some of the best in the segment. They have massaging function, they're endlessly configurable, the heated and cooled function works great, and they are long enough for taller drivers, which is to me a huge thing in an SUV like this. So with that, let's head to the shop.
Underneath the X6, in my approximation, this is the best angle of this car, underneath. And I don't want you to tell me the price because I can already assume this is gonna be expensive because it's built on what we saw in the 5 Series, the X5, X7, 7 Series. You have all aluminum in the front and you have double wishbone suspension, and I know I've seen aluminum in the back, but tell me a little bit more before we go back there.
So this is a shared architecture called CLAR, which this is the luxury car variant. So as you said, it can be stretched to the 7 or X7, and this is more similarly related to the X5 or 5 Series. The primary difference between the X5 and the X6, other than the exterior uglification of it, is that they lowered the center of gravity and stiffened it up because it's supposed to be a sporty variant of the X5. Now, some of the ways they've accomplished that is with active roll stabilization. So you have active sway bars to help mitigate this car from paddling like a boat. And because this is the M550i variant, you have rear steer and you have these enormous M Sport brakes.
Yeah, they are big, and we're going to talk about some of the driving characteristics when you strip away kind of like the joking around and the aesthetical part of it. The engineering in terms of the drivetrain, all the typical things we always rave about is still here. But let's take a look at the back real quick before we move on.
All right.
In the back, there's some things that you don't typically see on cars. So let's talk about that briefly. For one, you don't usually see aluminum subframes in cars. You don't see the aluminum brace. This subframe is enormous. It is really a piece of artwork, and you only find this in the 5 Series or up. The next thing is the rear wheel steering module, which is pretty compact, but you have this enormous control unit that helps the active sway bar. So this motor unit can stiffen and soften the sway bars based on ECU input, steering wheel angle, all the body control
And what
sensors.
that effectively basically makes the driver feel is a smaller car. Allows it to turn in better.
Absolutely. And all of this stuff, again, is what BMW does the best. Now, in terms of refinement, it's not all about sport. You have these huge vibration isolators on the suspension mounts. This reduces NVH. It reduces certain sound frequencies created by mechanical parts and vibration and all that. So you see that as well. But let's talk about the meat and potatoes of why you would get the i50.
The 550i has the N63 mark, and that's a twin-turbo V8, and it's attached to the ZF 8-speed gearbox. It produces 526 horsepower and 556 foot-pounds of torque. Oof.
Well, it's time, Jack. It's more BMWs. I'm shocked you're not just drooling right now.
I am actually, Mark. I'm about as excited as you could possibly imagine.
So let's see how it gets off the line. We got a twin-turbo V8.
All right.
Dude, this thing is scary fast.
Yes, it's quite brisk, as they say. In fact, this feels every bit as fast as last week's X3M.
So I got behind you in the X3M when you launched, and I launched right behind you. They were this far apart, up to like 90 miles an hour. But this, that said, this has 2 extra cylinders, so
and it sounds a hell of a lot better.
It does. You don't have the fakeness with the fake engine noise that they're putting into all the inline 6s. So let's just get this over with, Jack. This is almost like an X5, or it really is an X5 in.
But Mark, no, this is a Coupe X5.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
This is in the ever-growing coupe-like SUV market for the man or woman who they don't want all the practicality in SUV, but they want the high ride height of a SUV.
Yeah,
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's fine.
Yeah, and I think just looking at it and thinking about it more, this was one of those cars, or whatever you want to call it, that was designed in a boardroom. They're like, we need to make some more X's. We need more X's. What do we got? It's like somebody's like, well, we found this Mercedes. It looks like a rolling turd on wheels. Let's make one of our own. And it will fool you from most angles, like basically no angle. You have to be looking at it from the front. And then everywhere else, it's just a disappointment to look at. And then it's not so much that maybe some people will find the beauty in it, but for me, the biggest negatives come on the fact that the inside...
If you were blind, you'd find the beauty in this car, Mark. From the exterior, it is horrifying.
I can get over that because it's a good interior until you realize how many blind spots there are. I cannot see out of this thing. I was backing out of your driveway at your mansion, and I could not see behind me. The cameras didn't help. It just was like pitch black. I couldn't see out of the mirrors. Nothing. This car makes no sense other than its ride height. Why you wouldn't just get an
Mark,
X5?
See, again, this is for the man or woman who wanted a coupe, but a coupe's too low. See, they need to be up high to look down on the poor people, Mark.
All right, you got this. Let's talk about how it drives. Just feel it. Here we go. Brakes. Ooh, good brakes. Good brakes. Good steering. Power is tremendous in this thing. This thing is so stupid fast that I can forget what I'm driving for a bit when you're romping it around.
But we're a broken record at this point.
Yeah.
Who does some of the best drivetrains? BMW. Who does probably the best implementation of the ZF 8-speed? BMW.
Who's got some of the ugliest cars?
BMW.
I don't know. You know what, Jack? I'm sorry.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That was 200. Final thoughts on the X6. This is yet another model designation in the BMW lineup that is horribly confusing. They have so many different versions of these crossover SUVs that I don't even know what they mean anymore. And that's fine, because this is geared towards somebody that doesn't want a full SUV. They still want the car coupe experience. I don't really know. But certain people love it. they love the way that it looks because it's so awkwardly different. And I think that's kind of where I will leave the styling discussion. It's got a good interior space that is unfortunately compromised because of the shape of the glass. The sight lines are not good. So that's just the compromise that they've had to make for the overall shape and the styling of these new coupe-ish SUV things. But when you get over that, everything else still functions BMW well. The infotainment, the electronics are top notch. I mean, really pushing the boundaries of where everybody else should be following them. The comfort factor is good. It's good for different body types. But here's the thing, BMW has kind of washed away all the feeling, all the connections. So when you're driving this car, it's very, very isolated and removed. So if you're somebody that really wants that, you're gonna love this thing. And the other thing that it does well, like every BMW, it is unbelievably fast. It also sounds great. It's just such a good driving experience, and that's why you buy BMWs at this point. You get solid electronics, solid interior design, great drivetrains. You just have to suffer through some of the strangeness in overall exterior design. And I'm gonna leave the final thoughts at that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
And again, to sound like a broken record, this is the value proposition at $97,000.
This is $97,000? Are you serious?
It's a value, Mark. You want to know why?
Why? You want to tell me? What's so? Where's the value that I'm getting here?
Well, we have a Cayenne Coupe S, which is about 200 horsepower less than this thing, and comes at it like 115 grand. At $97,000, this is less money.